Welcome to Untrained. Hey, Whitney.
Hey, Iris.
Hi. We have an awesome guest today. I know we're towards the end of Whoop Whoop is right. We're towards the end of Pride Month, but we wanted to bring on a special guest, Joanna Lohman, Jo. And she's a global keynote speaker and performance coach, building a new generation of authentic leaders who redefine success. She's a former professional soccer player and member of the United States women's national team. During her 16-year professional career, she's built a platform for social impact and became the first player in Washington Spirit history to have her jersey retired because she's a badass. She is a human rights activist and a sport diplomat traveling the world to run programs in less developed nations. And as a performance coach, which we're going to touch on today, and professional speaker, she has shared her message with organizations all over the world. And that message is bringing your whole human and aligned self to work and performance. So, Jo, hey.
And happy birthday. Thank you. Hello from the birthday celesbian.
Celesbian.
All right. I'm like Z-list celebrity, so I call myself a celesbian because then I move up the alphabet to maybe like a D. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's my favorite new word.
Yeah. You're an A-list celebrity to me. So
in our world, for sure.
In our world.
You're getting a very special version of Jo today. Not only is it my birthday, I turned 42 today. I give even less fucks. I hope I can say that on.
Yes, you can.
The Jo Hawk is wild and free. I'm not cutting it until Friday for my big birthday party in DC. You're all invited. So you're getting raw, unfiltered Jo here today. So let's go. Ask me all the hard questions.
Ask you all the hard questions. One of the things that drew me to you is your story and your background. You have athletic performance. You also have coming out, right? And more alignment with yourself. And I'd love to kind of touch on some of that historical piece, because when we get to the point of the performance and human performance, both in athletics and at work, it is part of your messaging. So I'd love for you to kind of start about your soccer journey, your growing up, and how do we become a celesbian?
All right. I'm going to give you the true map of how to become a celesbian, and there'll be some surprises in it because I was a full scholarship athlete at Penn State University. So 4-time academic All-American, captain of the women's soccer team, 2-time Big Ten Player of the Year, graduated with a 3.98 GPA, y'all. She's not just a pretty face. Okay. Nor just a dumb jock. She's actually a #mathlete because I minored in math, majored in business. So with that said, as I was peaking in my college career, I was also engaged to a man. I know. I always wait for the shock factor there because I wasn't born this gay. And that shocks a lot of people. I didn't know I was gay really until I was 21 years old. And I think that was because I didn't have the language for it when I was a kid. We never really talked about it. There weren't many role models for me to look up to in the career community. And so I lived, I would say, the stereotypical heterosexual life. And it wasn't until my senior year of college, where I was high flying, about to go into the professional league, really won every award you can think of in college, engaged to a very nice young man, when I realized I had my first experience with a woman. I often say I got hit by the gay stick, that I came flying out of the closet because I was like, okay, this is the life that I'm supposed to live. And I say that almost jokingly, but it was hard. It was hard because I had a vision of my life and my parents had a vision of my life. And when you shatter that vision, it's almost like you have to mourn the death of who you thought you were going to become. So I thought I was going to have that traditional wedding, potentially the kids one day, the white picket fence, the 2.3 kids, right, living in the suburbs. And to add on top of that, I was supposed to go top 5 in the first ever women's professional soccer draft. And that league folded. It went bankrupt. And so it was like overnight, I lost the dream husband. I wasn't going to have that dream wedding, and I lost my career. And I mean, talk about adversity, challenge, chaos. And that set the trajectory for what I feel like was the rest of my life. Coming out to my friends and family. I mean, my mother was well known for saying it's hard even when you accept it, right? I think for them, again, they had a vision of my life, and all of a sudden I had shattered that vision. So it took them time. I then took off like traveling the country and the globe, trying to follow my dream of being a professional soccer player because there was no league here. So we're talking about a decade of uncertainty, instability, playing all over the country and the globe, playing for 7 different teams, 5 different countries, trying to establish my identity. And looking back, I think really that adversity, that challenge and change is what has built me into the human being I am today.
Can you say a little bit about the process? You use the word shattered a lot, which is such a profound metaphor, and building and finding your identity. Could you give us a story from that building, from that coming to know yourself and integrating that new self?
I would love to. And the metaphor that I really like to use is the idea of a crab. I'm a Cancer, as you know, Whitney, a proud Cancer. I'm from the great state of Maryland. Our state animal is the crab. So my idea of transition is molting, right? It's shedding your skin and growing into a bigger and better version of yourself. So when I think about my coming out journey, it was a version of myself molting, shedding the old version of Joe to really grow into the new version of Joe. And a story that comes to mind was 2015. 2015 was the first season that I joined the Washington Spirit. So it really was my hometown team. It was coming back. It was a homecoming, and for lack of a better word. And after traveling around the country and the globe, and that was the first year that I started to really like shave patterns into the side of my head. And the mohawk became the Joe Hawk, right? An even like new level of my identity. I was playing in front of fans that I loved in a city that I loved, and I was playing the sport that I loved. And so I felt like when I started to express myself in an even more masculine way, when I started to find my gender expression, my identity, I was the most successful that I've ever been on the field. And I don't think that is a coincidence. I think when you are able to go to work and feel authentic and feel comfortable in your own skin and express your true strengths, you will get the highest performance in that, whatever that career is. And so I was really experiencing, I would say, a career rejuvenation from this. I was in my 30s, like you're not supposed to have a rejuvenation in your early 30s as a professional athlete, but here I was playing the best soccer of my life because I was expressing my authentic excellence off the field. So that's a good story that I love to kind of build that connection between authenticity and business optimization.
I love that story, and I'm so glad you told it. And I would love for you to back up and talk about those micro moments in between when you shaved the mohawk or the design to the side and you weren't sure how it was going to go. Yeah. You didn't have the proof yet that you were the best performer of your life.
Yeah. So the first time that I cut off all of my hair, that I shaved my head, I was playing professionally in Sweden. I think sometimes we need permission to become a different version of ourselves, and leaving the country can often be that permission. It's like you are able to reinvent yourself because all the people who are familiar to you are no longer there. Everyone who has expectations and judgments of you are no longer in the picture. And so traveling abroad, playing abroad allowed me to express myself without inhibition. And I was able to take more risks. And I think being able to take those risks is like you step out, you dance out into the world. How does this feel? And for me, I was like, oh, this is a better version of Joe. And slowly over the years, my hair transitioned. My wife loves to make fun of all the photos of me over time of my hair and how it transitioned. And the first time that I shaved the patterns into my hair, I was traveling to Las Vegas. Actually, a friend and guest of Simon Sinek, who I'm sure you know, he asked me to come see one of his speeches. I was flying out there. I mean, what cooler place to reinvent yourself in Las Vegas where no one gives an F? So I was like, all right, here we go. I'm going to let myself loose. And that was the first time I shaved like 3 racing stripes into the side of my hair. And from that point on, it was like an absolute release of like a rotating billboard of what was important to me on the side of my head. And Yeah, the fans, since I was playing professionally, the fans loved it. So every 2 weeks I would change my haircut and they'd be like, Joe, what are you going to get, for this game? And if Pride Month came along, I would get the equality symbol. When the pulse shooting happened, I had a heartbeat pulse with the number 49. All of these different representations of how I was able to express, like, what is my purpose? What is my passion? Something that is bigger than the actual game.
I know we're talking about your coming out in your transition or Pride Month, but I'm trying to connect the dots between what we've talked about this year, Whitney. We've talked about people who are wanting change. They're wanting to be more themselves. They're in this point of transition. They're in a point of, and this is the point of untrained, right? Like, this isn't working anymore. There's this sort of tension of, this isn't working. I'm not this. I want something different. I want a career change. We talked to someone who's a career coach, and she also changed industries and talks to people about how scary it can be. So what I'm hearing is a couple things and this is the coaching, like, this is what I'm hearing. So what I'm hearing is a couple things is, in the very beginning, it can be really scary. You start to take some risks, right? So you started to take some risks. You had what you had. It should be enough, but I don't feel like this is where I want to be. You start to take some risks. The one thing you said too is you left the country. And so that's the other thing, is you went somewhere else that, people in this arena saw you as a certain thing or certain identity. So you really needed to shift to places and people and support that really could see you as you were becoming that person in transition, right? So that's what I'm hearing too. And it's very much this like lovely journey of like, this is scary. And then I'm trying these couple things, and then it's kind of scary. And then I'm getting to a point where I'm getting more comfortable. Now I'm shaving stuff into, the side of my head. And that's the other thing, is there's also some bold moves around giving yourself permission to really step into that too. So I want to kind of hear how you resonate with that, because these transition journeys isn't just about, pride. It isn't just about coming out. It is about more alignment to self. And that's what Untrained is about. So I don't know if any of that's resonating for you.
It really resonates. And I love how you use the word becoming, because I think we're in a constant state of becoming. That's the whole idea of the evolution with the crab. If we can imagine molting, a crab molts 30 to 40 times in its lifetime. So we are consistently going through this process where we shed our own skin. And it's scary AF, right? It's scary as fuck. And two, it's painful, because you are literally like bursting out of your own skin to then regrow it. And so you can't have these steps towards authenticity, these steps towards the best version of you, without that pain, without that fear. Because, go ahead, Whitney.
Well, I just want to mark something that I think you did so beautifully and that you articulate in your story. Many people will say, what's wrong with me? I don't fit. And you said, I want to let this out. Yeah. I want to find a way to let this out and see what happens. So I just want to name that. You never said, what's wrong with me? You just said, what is this?
Yeah.
Let's get this out.
Yeah.
And I want to name that and mark that and celebrate that.
I love that. I really believe that working from the inside out is the greatest point of impact. And I think as a society, we tend to want to box people in. Right? That for us in our brain, something that is neat, ordered, we desire that. And so subconsciously, without even thinking about it, we are boxing people in with expectations, with judgment, with preconceived ideas of who they are. And many of us feel very restricted to live inside of these boxes. And I have been bold enough and brave enough to be able to step outside of that box, because that's where I feel most beautiful, right? And when we feel most beautiful, that's when we do our best work. But that hasn't come without a lot of pain and discomfort. I'm constantly getting misgendered, right? When I walk into bathrooms, when I walk into locker rooms, I can't stand airports, right? TSA is so uncomfortable for me because people don't know what gender I am. They often call me sir. And so there are these moments, these pivotal micro moments where I could say to myself, ooh, I don't fit in. I should grow out my hair. I should change my body, the way that I express my gender. But instead, I realize these moments are a way to create space and create an expansive view of what humanity can look like. So if the next person who walks behind me, who may be identify as a woman who has a mohawk won't get the same stares or the same, misgenders like I would. And so I think my higher purpose is to expand the definition of what a woman can look like, to expand the definition of what a woman can be. Because I think, like you also eloquently said, everyone, man, woman, however you identify, we all feel somehow boxed in, and we want to express ourselves, that we want to experiment, that we haven't felt brave enough or bold enough to do that. So when they see someone like me up on stage, vulnerable, expressing themselves in a way that they feel is authentic, I'm giving them permission to find a different dimension of themselves that they've never seen before or been afraid to have seen, if that makes sense.
That makes so much sense. My last client, I was just talking to her, and has her pilot's license. Mm-hmm. And I was saying, you need to share this with people, because I'm going to share how it impacts me. When you talk about that, I feel empowered that a woman can go get her pilot's license for fun, right? When everything you named, when you share it, it says you can do this too. I did it. I can feel it just when you're talking about it.
Thank you.
Are there people, Jo, or what did people do to help you along the way? Because maybe this is a good time to talk about that allyship. And one of the other things we talk about on Untrained is you can't do these things on your own. You can't shift and change. What are some things that people can do to help support people who are coming out or people who are in transition, et cetera? Are there things that you felt were pretty pivotal to give you more confidence? I mean, you're really confident. So did people help you with that and support you with that?
Absolutely. And allyship is such an important piece to this puzzle. I will think of a recent story that only happened last fall, and I was hired to do a speech. And as confident as I come across, I'm now speaking in corporate America. I'm now speaking in the biotech pharma industry. And there are moments where I'm like, how can I, who's never had any experience in biotech or pharma, as a professional athlete, what can I really teach these people up on stage? And so there are moments where I suffer from imposter syndrome, where I don't feel like I belong in these spaces. And I was hired recently by a client, Amgen, which is a biotech company, and they hired me and they really encouraged me to lean into my uniqueness. They're like, Jo, we are hiring you because you do not look like anybody else we have ever hired. And that meant so much to me, so much that I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to incorporate even more of the deeper dimensions of Jo. This was the first time that I grabbed the soccer ball and I dribbled through the audience. I juggled up on stage and they were eating it up. But I would not have done that unless they gave me permission to be myself. They gave me space to show up exactly as I wanted to. They're like, wear your light up shoes. We want your most colorful Adidas jacket. Like, we want you to be 100% Jo. And in my rehearsal for that speech, I walked off stage and someone who has worked with them for years, we met, and he was tearing up because he's like, Jo, there's never been anyone like you that has spoken to this company. Like, what you say is going to be so powerful. How you stand up on stage is going to change their lives because they've never heard it before. And, that was just another encouragement to me to stand into my own power, to stand into my own uniqueness, because I think when we bring our unique strengths to work, we have better business, we have better teams, right? We have better profits. And that's what we all worry about, is the profits. And so that is one story of how, subtly almost, it was allyship. And then you think about your friends and your family, and it's just about creating space. Like, give each other space to be who they want to be. And I may not know who that is all the time. So I'm going to mess up. I'm going to step out and get burned a little bit. But just give me space to figure it, trust me. I love that word, trust. Like, trust that our kids are going to figure it out. Trust that our friends are going to figure it out. And it's not our job to tell them who they are supposed to be. So I think those are just two ways that people have really helped me to be a better version of Jo.
I like the thought of allyship isn't just a doing, but it's a being. It's
space making.
It's what? Say it again, Whitney.
It's space making. Space making. I'm curious. Who do you want to become? I'm here for you. What's next? Go for it. Making space, making room. That's what I heard.
Yeah, that's a huge learning lesson for me because I'm a doer. I'm like, okay, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to control it. I'm going to help it.
Yeah.
And you know my journey with Emma. She has my daughter. We talk about it often. She has shaved hair and she's often called a boy. We've been on a journey ourselves of discovery and also her discovery of her own sexuality. And there is everything in me, Joe, that's like, I text you and I'm like, oh my God, I got to help her with this. I got to help her with that. I got to get do this and do that. But what you just said is so profound for me is it's not the doing, Iris. It's the being there for her and the person that she wants to become. And she's not going to get it right every time. And you're not going to get it right every time. But I love that permission. So I appreciate that learning.
Yeah, I love to think of it. It's not a destination, right? Allyship is not a destination. Identity is not a destination. It's an orientation. It's how we choose to show up each and every day for ourselves and for each other. And I think that idea of trust is something that I've tried to give my daughter. That's the first word I wanted to say to her when she came out of the womb. I wanted to say to her, I trust you, because that's just such an important piece, I think, of parenting, because that signals like the letting go. As hard as it is to let go and see someone trip and fall and stumble, it is so essential to their life journey and identity building to allow them to do that, because everyone's crisis is coming. Everyone's. And if we allow our kids to experiment and grow, then their crisis will come a little bit earlier, right? They're going to figure out who they are. And so at the age of 25, as they're walking through the world, they're going to have confidence. They'll be able to walk through the world with self-worth, an idea of who they are, versus us always trying to shape and mold them throughout their world. So I've always just that's the thought that's always in the back of my mind when it comes to parenting Luna. And it's hard as hell, isn't it? And I always want to be like, do this, here, I'll fix it for you. I'll do that. But so much of it is just sitting back and just watching.
It sounds like to you, I trust you is the opposite of a box.
Yes.
We've talked about this concept of authenticity, and you are doing a lot of speaking to different organizations, groups, and businesses. Do you often talk about how we can show up with authenticity, or what that means in the context of corporate America? Because I think sometimes we get it confused, or we can often just do very black and white. It's like authenticity means I'm showing up with everything out on the table. And that's not comfortable for everyone. And what we share has to be pretty personal. So I would love your take on it, how you kind of talk about it in different contexts, especially in the corporate world.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I think there is a misperception that authenticity means showing up one way all the time, when I find it actually to be very different from that. I think we are all multidimensional, right? We all have dimensions to our identity. We are all things. And so authenticity, I'll give you another metaphor, is being the DJ of your own life. It is knowing when to adjust what knob for the environment that you're in. So I will use an example for Joe, the celesbian. So I travel a lot, right? And I run programs for the State Department overseas. I've traveled to sub-Saharan Africa 4 years in a row. So Niger, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Botswana. I'm traveling to countries where it is illegal to be a homosexual. So how would someone like me show up authentically in a country where I could be arrested for who I am? And this is a great scenario to think about. I'm adjusting the dials, right? I'm going to turn down Homo Joe. I'm going to turn down that dial when I go to Nigeria, right? Because it's not safe for me. That doesn't mean I'm not being authentic. I still show up. I have so much joy. I bring my full personality, but I'm aware of what the situation is requiring of me. And that's leadership. It is not showing up one way and one way only. It's reading our environment, our situation, and then adjusting accordingly. So you're still authentic, but you also feel comfortable. So that's how I love to think about it. It's how am I adjusting the dials today? There are certain situations where I need to speak up. There are other situations where I need to listen, where I need to sit back. This isn't about me. So for me, it's always, whenever I walk into a room, okay, what version of Joe is still authentic, but what version of Joe is serving this moment and the people that I'm with? So that is my definition of authenticity, is just being the DJ of your own life and bringing the strengths that are most applicable to that environmental moment.
And I'm going to loop it back around to a lot of the body intelligence that we've been talking about. You need to listen with your entire body to know which track to play, how loud it should go, and being completely online yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this all starts and ends with self-awareness, right? This all starts and ends with the internal work. Like, you have to have an intimate knowledge of who you are. If you don't have that intimate knowledge and that feeling of who you are, then you're unable to turn those dials, because you're not even aware of what dials that you have. And I think that is like step number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? Is just building that self-awareness and having those moments of solitude and quiet where you're able to sit with whatever emotions you have, whatever feelings, experiment. Like, this is all we're talking about. Like, we are our own scientists, right? Like, we constantly are experimenting with our identity. And if you don't look at it that way, then it's going to be difficult to have the compassion when you make a mistake, or you feel like you danced out a little too far and you got burned, right? I mean, that's equally as important as the times that we succeed, right? Because failure is progress in disguise. So we have to be able to fall down, get our hearts broken, not get what we want, because those are the moments that our identity shifting, right? So for instance, when I came out, it was like, my identity was shattered. And when your identity is shattered, when you don't get what you want and your heart's broken or a piece of you is broken, you get to pick up the pieces. I get to look down and say, what pieces of me still feel authentic to Joe? And I'm like, oh, this one, no, I don't want that one. That's what society's telling me to do. This one, this is just a norm. I'm getting rid of it. Like, these are the pieces that are Joe. I'm going to put back to a bigger, better version of myself and then move forward. And so that's like kind of the process of figuring out who you are, but that can't happen without that like that transformation, that morphing, that shattering, right? Of getting to know yourself.
I want to ring bells every time you talk, because it just is so. I love what you're saying, and it feels so what we've been talking about and articulated. So ringing some bells, and I also would love to hear what. And I'm sure they change, but what are your practices, the self-reflection practices, the way you check in with yourself and then make those micro adjustments? Do you have daily practices?
Yeah, that's a really great question, because this all can feel so high, right? This all can feel such like a wide lens of like, how do we focus in on building our own identity? And I think a very pivotal part of my life was when I was single. So like, I was single for about 4 years of my life. So like, waking up every day and saying to myself, okay, like, what do I want to do today? Right. I think that was a huge piece to my own growth. That's when I was playing professionally. So from about 2015 to 2019, I was single, and really just waking up every morning and trying to decide what does Joe want today? How do I feel? What makes me happy? And now it is, again, spending time reflecting on my day, keeping a journal, making sure that I have values established in my own life. My values are authenticity, courage, and trust. Spells out the word ACT. So making sure that my behaviors are in line with my values, that's really important to me. And always finding ways to challenge myself. I think that's a big piece of who I am, is pushing those boundaries, of getting up on stages, right? Of being scared, of having those nerves and those butterflies, because I think in those moments is when you truly feel like you're figuring out different dimensions of yourself.
So it sounds like your practices are daily reflection, daily intention, and always having that next push zone sort of figured out.
Thank you for summarizing that so well. Yes. 3 things. We love 3s.
We love 3.
I was going to ask a question. I know we as a group, because of what we do, often make the time to reflect, and we're pretty deep thinkers about that. Sometimes I'm not puzzled. There is no judgment. But some people go, well, I just don't have the time to that. That's nice for you. You're intentional about that, and that must be a you thing. When people have trouble finding the time or trouble doing this reflection, that it feels like from the outside, it's like, oh, Jo's doing that and it's so easy for her. Is there something you can say to them of, here's a practice that might be useful for you?
Yeah, I don't blame them for feeling that way, because I think we live in a society that values activity over achievement. We are a society that is constantly doing, and we actually see people of higher status that are always working or always doing something. And I think for me, it's about slowing down to speed up. And this doesn't take 30 minutes, right? You don't have to set aside 30 minutes of your day, which I think a lot of people believe that you have to, or you have to sit in silence and meditate, because that can feel out of reach for a lot of people also. It can literally be 2 minutes, right? 2 minutes, Iris, in the morning. It could be 2 minutes before you go to bed. It can be a practice that feels good to you. It could be a 5-minute walk around your neighborhood. I love to walk my dog, always going into the trails, always going into the woods. We're walking. I do not take headphones. I try not to take my phone. So it's time away from being distracted, which can be very difficult in our world now. So it's identifying, like, what are one or two things that allow you to self-reflect. Maybe for you, that's sitting for 2 minutes quiet. Maybe for the other person, it's walking for 5 minutes. Maybe for someone else, it's swimming for 10. Whatever it is that gets your brain to slow down, where you're away from your phone, you're away from your typical distractions, I think is the best way for us to self-reflect, to slow down, to activate a different part of our brain that is so necessary. So it's just like, it's finding what fits for you. There's no one size fits all to this.
So 5 minutes, I want to summarize that one. It sounds like finding 2 minutes in your day, either walking or sitting or in your commute, where you are intentionally not distracted and going inside.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the use of the word intention. Like, there has to be intention behind it. And let's be aware that your brain will wander to all different thoughts, right? You're going to be thinking about, what do I have to do today? What's for dinner? What do I have to cook for the kids? What's on my meeting agenda tomorrow? But that's okay, because as you continue to do it, you'll be able to pull your brain back, right? And that's the whole idea. That's the mental exercise that we all need. That is the mental fitness that is so necessary as a foundation for any type of success. And so it's about building that foundation, and that foundation is built brick by brick. And it's not intensity over consistency. It can be a minute a day for a week, and then you go up to 2 minutes, and then it's 3 minutes. And if you want to stay at 5, you stay at 5. But it's more about the consistency. I think so much of American culture is about intensity. It's like, I'm going to go out and run a marathon, and then I can call myself a runner, versus I could run 2 minutes a day and I could call myself a runner. I could run twice a week and call myself a runner, right? So it's about sticking to whatever habits work for you that are consistent over time, because that's where we find success, is in that consistency.
Jo, the last question I have for you is another identity that you folded in recently with Luna in motherhood.
Yeah.
First of all, she's like the cutest baby of all time.
I've heard so much about this baby's cheeks. So much.
And if you want to follow Jo on LinkedIn or Instagram, you can see pictures of Luna. Oh my God, she's holding up a picture of the cutest baby ever. So I'd love to know how this identity has either validated some of your thoughts or added more to challenged you.
Ooh.
I'd love to know more about this identity.
Man, this one fucked me up in the beginning. I'll be honest.
Amen, sister.
First of all, I never expected to have a child. And so that itself was a massive transition for me. And then the term mom, like, I just could not imagine myself being called mom. And I was trying to put my finger on, like, why? Like, what is it about that? Maybe it's because I imagine my own mom, who is absolutely amazing, my best friend, but I just feel so different from her. And I think I had a stereotype in my brain of what a mom looks like. And I'm like, I'm not a mom, right? Like, this is not who I am. So what was really interesting and cool about this is that this happened at the age of 41. And I thought I had myself figured out, right? Again, that it's not a destination, it's an orientation. So I thought I was so authentic, I'm content in my own skin. And then, this happened. And I was like, okay, I still have work to do, clearly. And I had 9 months to do this work of, what do I want to be called? What do I want to say to her when she comes out of the womb? Who do I want to be in her life? Because there's no DNA of Joe and Luna, right? So there's that other layer to it, is that my wife was the birth parent. I'm the adoptive parent. And so there's all these complexities that came together. And over time, I wanted to leave space. And I wasn't married to like any sort of term. I was thinking she can call me JoJo. I felt okay with mom. I knew my wife wanted mama, which is fine with me. And I found that like people were like, what is she going to call you? What is she going to call you? And it was like uncomfortable for other people to not know what she was going to call me, which I understand to a certain extent, because I think they don't want to call me by the wrong term. But I still wanted to leave that space because I was like, she could call me Dodo for all I cared, like whatever resonates with her. And what we're finding now is that she calls me JoJo, which I find to be adorable because all my nieces and nephews have called me JoJo. She'll sometimes call me mom, sometimes call me mama. And the beautiful thing is that like, I don't have the ego where it does not bother me at all. Like I love anything that she calls me. And I think the beauty of not having DNA inside of Luna is that I can give her that space. I'm not looking for myself in Luna, nature. I'm not. Like Luna's not going to be good at math necessarily because Joe had a math DNA, right? So I'm able to take a step back and allow Luna to evolve into whoever she wants to become because she's her own person. Like there is no Joe in her. There's nurture, of course. She can kick a soccer ball, I'll tell you that much. But I think that has given me a sense of freedom. It's given me a even more ability to try to give her that space because of that aspect to it, of having no ego when it comes to like, what is she going to call me? There will be moments in the future. I know this is going to happen where we're walking through an airport and they're going to maybe call me sir in front of her. Like we're going to have these amazing conversations about gender. She will say, this is JoJo. They're going to be like, who is JoJo? Like there's going to have to be conversations around this. And I'm actually looking forward to it because I think life is complex, right? The beauty of life lives in its complexity. And I don't want Luna to think life is simple. I want her to know that there are a variety of identities and dimensions, and there's a spectrum. And however we choose to show up is the way that we feel most authentic. And I want to be a model for her too in that way of, she can be whoever she wants. So I think motherhood has challenged me, and it consistently challenges me, but it also provides me so much beauty in a way of I'm able to see this young child grow up in a world that has so many more options than I ever did when I was a kid.
I just want to reflect that I am so glad you are on stages all over the world with a microphone, because the respect and kindness and freedom in your perspectives is gorgeous. And I'm so grateful that you shared them with us today.
Thank you, Whitney. It's taken a lot of work. I'll tell you that much.
I respect it. I
told you you'd love her. So at the end of the podcast, we like to just kind of sum up of one thing. Joe, you can tell us one thing you want the audience to take away, and then we'll talk about what we reflect and take away from today's conversation. So I'll start with you, Joe. What do you want the audience to take away from today's conversation?
I remember the word for 2023. So the most Googled word for 2023 was authentic. And I think we live in a world now that craves authenticity. And when we show up as the best version of ourselves, there is nothing robotic or artificial about that. And I think that is where we reach business optimization. I think high performance hinges on authenticity. And so I just want to encourage people to take one step today. Like, what is one step you can take today that scares the hell out of you? That is a risk where you're going to explore a different part of your identity. Well, you're going to explore a different dimension to who you are, because as we consistently experiment and explore, I think we're really going to see better leadership in our country and better leadership within our organizations.
Mine is this newer approach to allyship. It's important to me that I help people feel like they belong, have a safe space. But I've never thought about that safe space being just space, like you said, with the freedom. So I really want to explore that, because I think by trying to do more, I'm actually boxing people in more than I realize. And so I think what you're teaching me here is, gosh, Iris, the world is so complex. And just because people have certain labels and things, but they don't fit in a box. So you're going to need to give them space to explore for themselves. And so if you want to be a good ally, please give them some space. And so I really want to think on that, reflect on that, because I think that was so beautifully said. And so like it really, you know how you get an idea, you're like, whoa, that's an idea. So Jo, I'm so glad for your wisdom, your knowledge, your journey, and to share it with us. And we're so happy to have you with us.
I'll say my takeaway is the opposite of a box is I trust you. I'm going to be musing on that as a parent, as a coach, as a human.
I think trust is the highest form of love. That's what I really believe.
Yeah.
Well, what do we say at the end of every podcast, Whitney?
Keep untraining and unboxing.
Yes, keep untraining and unboxing. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe to our YouTube and channel and anywhere you get our podcasts. This is one of the last episodes we have for this season. We've got a lot planned for season 3, and we'll see you there. Thanks, Jo. Keep
Thank
untraining.
You all. Happy Pride.